Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there. In this episode, grab your utility belt, put on your cowl, and jump in the tumbler with us as we take a look back at what would be the first of many reboots of the Batman franchise, Batman Begins. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff, and Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome to the 3324 podcast. If you're new, we appreciate you checking us out. If you're a current listener, thank you so much. We want everybody to do us a favor, if you would. And if you can follow us on your favorite podcast provider, that would be awesome. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, a review and a rating would be stellar. It would be interstellar.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like that, huh?
Okay. Nolan reference. Very good, very good.
So we have our third special guest with us, and it is I'm happy to say a dear friend, someone that I've had the honor and privilege to not only see perform. He's a multi-hyphenate, first of all. Let's do the multi-hyphenate. Writer, director, actor, blogger. That's like in the park home run. That's hitting all the bases, and it's Nick Leshi is with us. Nick also he does have a blog, and it's a pulp culture blog called City of Kick. We're going to put a link in the show notes to that, so definitely check that out. He talks about all types of entertainment, television, film, really great reads. And then also he's going to be soon to be seen on the YouTube web series called Multiverse Corporation. So we will drop both of those links into the show notes. And with that big run-up, Nick Leshi, how are you? How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Eric. Very good to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Was that like an introduction, like bar none?
That was stellar.
I wish I got introductions like that all the time, everywhere I go. A multi-hyphenate. That's ambition right there. Something I would look forward to being. So thank you.
Yeah, you have achieved it. Yes. Nick has written plays. He has directed plays. He has starred in plays, and he has, like I said, I've had the opportunity to work with Nick also, directing short films, and he was gracious enough, much like Sean Grady, our other friend of the show, to read what I had written and said, you know what, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Very nice.
No, I'm loving your podcast so far, so I really appreciate you inviting me, and I look forward to this conversation because being a movie fan first, that's really what got me into entertainment, got me into writing, got me into acting and comic books. That sparked my imagination. And so what better topic than what we're going to talk about today?
Absolutely, which is Batman Begins, which, as I said in the open, it's the first reboot. And it will be the first of a few reboots. First of many reboots, especially most recently. They're on with Batman. They're on like a reboot frenzy.
DC in general, I think the whole universe is like multi-universes going on. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But perhaps Nick, you could explain it better with this. What do you feel? How do you feel about all this rebooting?
I remember Adam West. So when Tim Burton did his first film, to me, that was kind of a reboot because I was always, as a kid, I loved Adam West. But Adam West, that whole 1960s Batman series was so different from the comic books. It seems like that's the face that was like always able to be recast. They had Val Kilmer, then they had George Clooney. So was this really the first reboot, I don't know. You know, even though the Joel Schumacher Batman movies kind of fit into that original universe because they still had the same guy playing Alfred, the same guy playing, Commissioner
Yeah.
Gordon. It was a reboot. It didn't
Yeah.
feel the same because it was a different Batman. So
Yeah,
but like
I consider all the Burton stuff. I consider the Burton stuff and the three movies that followed kind of one thought because they got into the whole recasting thing, but those are like they're a cluster of films like those four, right? Would you agree?
absolutely right. But like you were saying, now they've got Ben Affleck. They're coming out with the Batman, right? They've got the Titans had somebody playing Bruce Wayne and Batman in that one. It's kind of like they're throwing everything in, and they're playing up the multiverse. Marvel's doing the same thing, the different Spider-Man, and we'll see if it works. In the comics, it kind of works, because they use the multiverse idea to fit the continuity, right? Because they have so many storylines, so many different artists and writers that it sometimes becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
A reader won't necessarily go into these comic book stories and take them individually. So fanatics would try to make it fit, right? Would try to make it fit into canon and try to explain why that's different, why suddenly this has changed, why suddenly he's doing a different costume, and the tone is changing, right? So their explanation in the comic books is you have different Earths and different realities, and now I think they're trying to fit that into the cinematic universe. We'll see if it works.
Even just different comic runs, though, too. I mean, you can get away with it in the comics. You can have 3 or 4 different Batman titles, and even if with just different types of storylines, or Marvel was famous for that too. There would be Marvel Tales, which was Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, the Spectacular Spider-Man. They would have all these different runs, and they were just kind of different storylines as well. So you didn't have to jam everything into one. Doing it in film, where we're at now with Batman, could get a little crazy because not only do you have, you've got the Robert Pattinson, the Batman feature film, right? Ben Affleck, they keep bringing him back and forth into the Snyderverse and they're trying to get him for HBO. But now Michael Keaton is also making a return in The Flash, which is going to be like a multiverse film. So there's, is it gimmicky? Is Marvel is supposedly doing it, like Nick said, with Spider-Man? How much is too much?
Well, when you say something like The Flash, that's a very specific subject is the multiverse. I mean, the other stuff, you're kind of scratching your head thinking, are they playing up the multiverse, or is it just, because the other thing didn't do too well, so we got to try it again? So now we're in this sort of culture where, we can just forget about that and cancel it. Yep. And then we'll just start over from scratch, So
multiverse as an excuse to reboot.
Yeah. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. In the case of DC,
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What we're going to do, we're going to go back to a simpler time.
Yeah.
When they only did one reboot at a time. So we are going to travel back to 2005, where simpler times of the George Clooney destruction of the Batman franchise had occurred. The sets were left smoldering. Joel Schumacher was sent out on a rail, like, do not touch the Batman franchise anymore. And the wonderful Christopher Nolan started. So let me give everybody the stats about the film like we normally do. And then we will get into Batman Begins, which is one of the classic and probably one of the best Batman films. So here we go. Released in 2005, directed by Christopher Nolan. Screenplay, this is important. The screenplay was by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer. We will talk probably a little bit about David S. Goyer because he is just very prolific as far as screenwriting. The budget was $150 million, which is really tame by today's standards for superhero films. And it made $373 million box office, which also is, back then it was pretty big, but now that's tame in the Endgame and Infinity War era. Okay, the cast. We've got a cast for days. So I'm going to try and go through. I'm going to leave 1 or 2 out, but we're going to hit 99% of them. Okay, and I won't. Christian Bale as Batman, Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, not yet Commissioner Gordon, Michael Caine as Alfred, Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes.
Spoiler alert. for Liam Neeson.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, or Ducard. Sorry.
Oh yeah, you kind of jumped the gun there.
I immediately Ducard, but he's. We're guessing. I don't think we're going to be giving anything away with Batman Begins. So this is not going to be like a Sixth Sense spoiler reveal. Cillian Murphy as Dr. Jonathan Crane. Spoiler: Scarecrow. Tom Wilkinson as Carmine Falcone. Morgan Freeman as Lucius. I love the way he says it. I love the way Michael Caine says it. Yep. Lucius Fox.
Lucius.
Yeah, instead of Lucius. Ken Watanabe as also Ra's al Ghul. And Rutger Hauer as Mr. Earl.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just in supporting, only because it's important in the Christopher Nolan universe, is Mark Boone Jr. is Flass, who was a detective. Mark Boone Jr. has worked with Christopher Nolan before, so he's kind of like one of the players in Christopher Nolan's world. So probably left out some other ones, but this is a cast and a half.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to say.
I think it was Nolan's intent to. I think it was the original Superman that inspired him to have a cast of this type. Because going back, you think of the Richard Donner, which, by the way, he sadly passed away today. You guys know about that, yes. But I just read that. So yeah,
Richard Donner did pass away as of today, as of the recording of this episode, at age 91.
Yeah,
and a prolific career, and mainly a Warner Brothers studio director. Yeah,
that Superman movie was a real inspiration for this. Even the formatting, not seeing the hero until really the halfway mark almost in this point. But the cast you mentioned, the movie starts out just right in, no opening credits or anything. And seeing all those familiar faces in these roles just pop up one after another. Rutger Hauer, Morgan Freeman. And now in hindsight, the kid who played Joffrey in Game of Thrones as the little kid.
That's right.
And, all these faces, so it's really wonderful.
Yeah, that was, you bring up something very interesting, that the movie just kind of starts. Not even a title card. So if you could literally put this on for somebody and say, let's watch a movie, they wouldn't know exactly what it was, or if they'd never seen it before, which is very interesting. And when we just read off this, when I read the cast, I just read off all these heavy guns in Hollywood. At the time, Christian Bale was really the unknown. Mm-hmm. They were trying to cast this film and probably learn some of the lessons that had just taken place, perhaps with Clooney and Kilmer, where the stunt casting. Let's get this one for this. Let's get Jim Carrey. Let's go. For the Riddler. This much like in the inspiration Nolan took for Superman, grounded more in the real world, not really grounded in a comic book world. And he actually said as much, that this Batman does not live in the world where there's other superheroes, where there's Metropolis and all this other stuff. So in the search for someone to play Batman, the casting, the people that screen tested for this is quite interesting. It wasn't a ton of, it wasn't like big names like Leo DiCaprio or someone like that. Christian Bale at the time was probably one of the biggest of the ones that did screen test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the emphasis was to get somebody who could play both Batman effectively and more importantly Bruce Wayne, and apparently he fit the bill in both cases. However, I think there was just the famous story of him while he was filming. What was the name of the film he was doing where he got really skinny?
The Machinist.
The Machinist. He lost a lot of weight. Method actor.
Right.
Yeah, and they were like, and Christopher Nolan's like, how do you look? Because he was afraid that, but Bale ended up bulking up for the role almost to the point where he was too big, and so he had to kind of scale it down a bit. But other than that, I think he was everybody.
And did he use that into like when he was younger, in those scenes when he was younger and he looked a little more gaunt, right? I think he used the fact that Christian Bale came into this and was still gaining the weight for the role. So he shot, I think, those scenes first. Yeah. And it really works. You see how, he does look like a younger guy.
Yeah, they do it with the hair. They part his hair on the side. They kind of really get, a little bit like some little bit looser clothing as well to kind of give him that young kind of look. other actors that had screen tested for this, oddly enough, Cillian Murphy, who plays Dr. Jonathan Crane, screen tested for it. Ian Bailey, who was not a big name actor. He was in Band of Brothers, most notably. David Boreanaz, right? We know him from Angel and Buffy and the show Bones. Billy Crudup, Hugh Dancy. This would have been odd and uncomfortable. Jake Gyllenhaal. If Jake Gyllenhaal had become Batman and everything that happened into the second film, his love interest would have been his sister.
That's right. Right.
So,
yeah, awkward.
Maybe Katie Holmes would have stayed in the role though for the next two movies.
Yeah, they would have had to. They would have had to. So they landed on Christian Bale, who up to this point, really, I mean, his biggest film was probably American Psycho, like that. He had started to become known for. You know, he was known for Empire of the Sun, which was kind of like when he was a kid. Yeah. Newsies when he was young. You know, that kind of stuff. And then American Psycho.
Well, he was the villain in Shaft.
The villain in Shaft, smaller role. Yeah, he played Walter Wade.
He was such a bastard in that movie.
Yeah, he was really good, but he was kind of working those smaller roles and working those characters. Reign of Fire, which was with the dragons with Matthew McConaughey.
Yep.
But then, Batman Begins, if you look at his filmography after Batman Begins, it launched him into the Hollywood elite, because then he would do The Prestige with Christopher Nolan, 3:10 to Yuma, Dark Knight, Terminator Salvation, The Fighter, one of my favorite films of all times, American Hustle as well. So this really set him up in a big way.
The thing of it is, for me, I'm probably, I don't know if we should go there right now, but
looks like we are.
He's such a, I think it's testament to his acting and the Dark Knight, for me, when he was a little over the top in his portrayal of Batman, I realized that was that Nolan's idea? Was it Christian Bale's idea to have the instinct to make him unlikable in that film, because that was the whole point of the film, and I kind of realized
Wayne or Batman,
for Batman, to subvert the character of Batman to the point where you're not supposed to like him, because they're building on, Harvey Dent, as the White Knight. And so it makes perfect sense as far as the narrative of the film, but he just, for me, it's like, going in, he made such a great first impression on the first movie that, when you see him in the Dark Knight and he's just like, with that growl. And it's just like, to me, it's just, I cringe every time I hear it.
Right. That voice.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
So what's your impression on that though? Do you think that that was something that done on purpose, or was it just, was he over the top, or was that an instinct in the writing of the film itself, or somebody thought of to do that so that he would be sort of out of place in a sense, like he is a caricature in that sense? I mean, what's your take on that?
In Batman Begins, the voice in Batman Begins, I think plays well, and I love the fact that the morality comes really through. And that's an underlying theme in the whole, where you like the character, and he is a hero, and he's not just this dark vigilante, this grim, dark thing that a lot of fans, it's very divisive, whether that's part of the core of what Batman is or not. And I think intentionally in the next two movies, like you say, Eric, it's played up. It's you're meant to see now, because in the beginning, the first movie, it's very idealistic. It's very like he's a hero. He's what Gotham City needs, right? He's that moral. He's not going to kill. He's not going to stoop down to the level of the criminals he's fighting. And even at the end, with when he's like, I didn't say thank you, and he turns to him and says, "And you never will. You never have to," or whatever the line is. Where it's like he's not doing this to become this statue where every Gotham City is going to be like, "Here's our savior," right? And then in the next two movies, this cycle continues, and I think Nolan is really going like, who are our heroes, and it goes into this darker place, because the Joker is this different level of villain. He's this criminal who's not doing things that the criminals in the first movie are doing. he's an anarchist, right? And then Bane in
Yeah.
the third one. So I think to reach the point where the hero has to rise again, I think you have to tear him down. So you're absolutely right. I think intentionally, I think in the next few, but then it becomes like with the voice and everything, I think that becomes a little much, you know. And I think
But
that's one of my criticisms of the other two movies, right?
Right, but as an audience member, that's what I didn't like about The Dark Knight. Effectively, it was because and especially I thought it was kind of odd that it was just the second film in that he would be acting so over the top this way when I loved him so much in the first film, which is why I think Batman Begins is probably my favorite of the three.
Well, I'll throw in a little bit on this, and then we're going to get onto Batman Begins, just to kind of, I think, to give that a little perspective. I think in the second film, you see Bruce Wayne is a little more obsessive, okay, and especially with the voice. And mainly it's the jail scene that everybody has a problem with when he's interrogating Heath Ledger. I mean, at this point, he does not know where certain people have been kidnapped. So I think the character of the Batman is also being played up a little bit more in an attempt to try and intimidate somebody who it turns out cannot be intimidated. Yeah. So I think it was just the obsessive nature, because they touch on that also with Alfred about you don't understand the Joker, you don't understand the nature about someone that just wants to watch the world burn. Yeah. And I think that was the dichotomy there, not to get too into the weeds with it, but I think that the character became more obsessive in the second one. And I think that just elevates the Batman character, right? He becomes more of what he was, of this, in the beginning it was, it was a little more gruff, but now he was trying to use whatever he had against the Joker to try and intimidate him, and none of that stuff worked. Hitting him, punching him, it turned out none of that would work. So getting back to Batman Begins. So let's briefly just talk quickly a little bit about David S. Goyer, because this guy wrote the screenplay, and he's just all over a lot of these comic book films to varying degrees. So as a writer, he wrote Blade, he wrote Blade 2, and he wrote Blade Trinity. So he was already kind of steeped into the comic book thing. He had done a lot of sci-fi. He wrote Dark City, which was a very interesting film back in 1998. Really, really bizarre. But yeah, Blade 2 was 2002. Blade Trinity was 2004. Batman Begins was right after it in 2005. And then he would work on the story for Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. And then here's where things get a little wonky, is he would write Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, which are head scratchers to me, because those, it doesn't seem like the guy that wrote Batman Begins wrote those two films.
You're right.
Because they seem so different. I dare say flawed. Man of Steel, to a lesser degree, but I would have never guessed. And maybe that's because Christopher Nolan helped co-write Batman Begins and maybe directed this a little bit more, with what he was looking for, with what Christopher Nolan was looking for.
Well, it was Nolan. He was involved with Man of Steel as well. When is he? I mean, I know he was a producer on it, but
but not in any story capacity or anything like that. Yeah,
the Snyderverse is an odd. It's an odd thing. You're right. It's kind of sketchy. There was just decisions made that are just kind of I don't know.
Weird.
Head scratcher. Yep.
We will save that for another one. Yep. And then let's just touch on Christopher Nolan a little bit. I had actually seen his feature film debut, his major feature film debut, Memento. I had seen that in the theater. Yeah. And was absolutely blown away. Yeah, that was great. Nick, did you ever see Memento?
Not in the theater. I saw it years ago on DVD. Insomnia, too. That was the other one.
Yes.
Before. But watching those two movies, you wonder what made them think this is the guy to take over the franchise. It to me, it doesn't fit. But what he delivered, it worked. They saw it, and they knew it, and it worked out. But you wouldn't think of it from looking at those two films, that this is the guy who can take a franchise and bring it back.
Well, I think what some of it might have been is you also have to think about what was happening with superhero films. There's a brief window of time after the Batman and Robin with George Clooney and Batman Begins. You had the X-Men films with Bryan Singer, who was a usual suspects. He was one of those kind of filmmakers that came out of nowhere and then was handed a franchise. Yeah. Right. Christopher, it kind of follows that. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man films were in between there, but But I think the X-Men kind of reset the tone also, where the film started going into a more serious tone, a little more of a realistic universe, as opposed to the Tim Burton, Addams Family gothic camp, like kind of campiness that it became. Getting Bryan Singer to take that on says, you know what, I think we want like a serious director for this kind of stuff, and not with the gimmicky stuff. And I think that might have had something to do with it, because the first two X-Men films were really, really incredible, and then the last one, which he didn't direct, it was okay. But
well, the climate too at the time. I mean, this is post 9/11. Everything was affected by it. Like TV, movies were pretty serious, cynical, darker. Everything kind of took that turn. And, of course, Batman being, the darker, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because I always thought of him as a serious, brooding character anyway. So, yeah, it was just the right fit. And there's an intelligence to the guy. I mean, he knows how to make a blockbuster film, but intelligently and smart. Yep. Yeah. So,
yeah. And Nick, you touched on Tim Burton a little bit earlier. So why don't you kind of talk a little bit about that, about the contrast between that very stylized, and specific style and specific look versus what we got with Batman Begins.
I mean, if you think about Tim Burton and the movies he's made, he's one of the few directors, I think, where you sit in front of one of his movies and you could say, this is a Tim Burton movie, right? He really picks movies that fit his ideas of characters and The Outsiders and everything from Edward Scissorhands to, all these other movies that he's made. So Batman, as a Batman fan, when you hear Tim Burton, you think, okay, this is going to work. A lot of folks maybe were taken aback. They were thinking Pee-wee's, Big Adventure, and you didn't
Beetlejuice playing Batman.
Yeah.
And of course, when they cast Michael Keaton, there was all this backlash by people like, oh, what is this? But it totally worked, I thought, with those first two movies. The more I watch Batman Returns, the more I realize what a great film that is as well. I thought it just really worked. And I wish I would have, we could have seen what his idea was for the third film. Maybe Billy D. Williams as Two-Face, and, what other ideas he had. I know he was going to bring in Robin at some point. Joel Schumacher, I actually love him as a director. I think, Lost Boys and some of these other movies he's made. I think the studio got involved with Batman Forever. Remember, was a big hit when it came out. Critically, it was trashed.
It was
Fans,
huge.
Were mixed about it. And then Batman and Robin was the one that kind of imploded on all levels. But Tim Burton, it was this world. He created Gotham, and then the music really worked. And now you look at what Christopher Nolan did, complete reversal, right? 180, total change, very realistic, fits in. It's a world without other superheroes. In the Tim Burton movie, you could almost see other superheroes kind of coming in. Right. This is it doesn't, like, even the origin when he goes to the theater with his parents, Bruce Wayne, as a little kid. In the comic books, it was always the Zorro movie. They were going to see a Zorro movie. And that was like one of his inspirations. And intentionally, I think Christopher Nolan had said, no, let's wipe that out, because no superheroes ever existed in this universe, right? So there was nobody that put on a mask to fight crime. That came something straight from Bruce Wayne, right? And seeing the bats early on as a child, the very first thing that like Bob Kane had done was he was an adult sitting in his lounge, and he sees a bat come through. And now here, he's taken stuff from later comics where the bats were always something that was in the psyche of this poor kid, Bruce Wayne, and made that part of the character development. Very different kind of feel to it. Tim Burton, I would love to see him come back to the character someday in some way. Maybe they'll do some homage to him in the Flash movie if they have the Michael Keaton character like they're saying they will be. Who knows? It's just a very different. It's an idea. It's about an auteur, right? The old auteur theory where the director kind of leaves their imprint, even though this is like a collaborative effort to make these movies with the cinematographer and the music and the cast and everything. It's not just one person making a film. That theory, I do believe in it, where it's like a director kind of brings a bit of herself or himself into the film. And that's what Tim Burton always did. And I think Christopher Nolan, now you see his latter movies, he has that too. You go see these movies, Inception and Interstellar and everything. It's like, and Tenet, you see it as a Christopher Nolan film. And he brought that into the Dark Knight trilogy, starting with Batman Begins.
Absolutely. And yeah, Tim Burton is absolutely style over substance. And I'm going to say that this, in a good way, is substance over style. That Batman Begins really, because everyone knows the story of Batman pretty much, the origin. So, the Tim Burton Batman series kind of picks up in the middle of he's already Batman, he's doing everything, and you get the obligatory flashback of the parents getting killed, but that's all you ever know about it, right? So with Batman Begins, the first hour of the film is really universe building. Is they're really setting the story for what the stakes are for the personal development of him, and the parents figure in a lot. There's a lot of discussion. They kind of give you the parent story, but throughout the film, there's a lot of references to, what would your parents think of you now, or what effect the murder of the parents had on Gotham at large as well. They talk about that a lot.
I kind of get the impression that Thomas Wayne was involved somehow. It's implied that he was part of perhaps some kind of an Illuminati type of thing along with Morgan Freeman's character Alfred, because they obviously know each other. So I feel like they almost had this little club going on where they were looking out for Gotham themselves, but waiting for someone to really, perhaps they couldn't do it, and as Bruce Wayne would do it or as Batman would do it, but waiting for someone to come along and but they, with a lot of money, and of course you see Lucius Fox, dealing with weapons and that kind of thing. So I feel as though they were kind of gearing up for something. I kind of get that impression in the film, because they do reference, and when he says, Lucius, it's good, always a pleasure, and he's like, Lucius, and that scene that you referenced, Dean, Alfred always getting on Bruce about his father, more so than I'm here to take care of you, but because Thomas Wayne was so important to me. That there's a slightly different thing there, I think, from all the Alfreds of the past. You don't really get that you don't really hear him talk about the father as much, but here it's like you have to maintain the name of Wayne, and your father was very important. Yeah, so the importance of building him up,
and this Alfred isn't afraid to push back and to call him out on that kind of stuff.
This Alfred's a badass. I mean, you could definitely tell. You could definitely tell he had a pass of some sort too. I always like to think that he was probably some kind of secret agent or something. In his youth.
They touch on that a little bit in the second film. He says, "Oh, when I was doing whatever with Jules or whatever." But I think so. So just to get back to the framework of the film, is the first hour is really kind of like the hero's journey. It's Bruce Wayne not seeing justice done for his parents, for the killer of his parents. He decides he's going to try and exact his own version of vengeance. This is before the whole Batman idealism took root. Is he was just as an angry person, obviously probably some psychological problems if he's willing to do this. It gets thwarted. He does not get to exact his version of vengeance. And when he reveals to to Rachel Dawes, his kind of pseudo girlfriend, what he was going to do, she says that, she goes, your father would be disappointed, and that sets him off on his journey. Basically, he confronts the local mob boss, but then at that point decides he's going to disappear.
Yeah, even the mob boss knows Thomas Wayne. Even there's a sense of, like I said, don't come down here with your anger, and trying to prove something. The great Tom Wilkinson, yeah. But there's my
Great
impression.
scene.
Sorry. But yeah, there's that sense of there's that sense of everybody knows Thomas Wayne, and he's such a big figure in this thing. That really wasn't an issue back in the day. So I always got a sense that he might have been perhaps into something. They were preparing for something. Just as
I don't know. I mean, they talked about getting into weapons, and that was more recent. So I don't know how far back that would go, but the specter of Thomas Wayne looms larger in Gotham than it did in previous incarnations. He was just a rich guy, just a rich person that had a mansion on the
Right.
hill. In this one, yeah, philanthropist,
Doctor,
doctor, industrialist, whatever, running all these, or his name is on these companies as as the front of it. But
even Liam Neeson's character, like, Ducard, he's telling Wayne when he's training him, he's like, your father. How does he know his dad? How does he know Thomas Wayne? And
Find out later that he really was instrumental in saving Gotham, and that was another twist later where the League of Shadows had. It wasn't just a decision now that we're going to destroy Gotham. Before, they were laying the groundwork through economics, right, to implode the city and just make it turn into like the cesspool and just destroy itself from within. And it was folks like Thomas Wayne, and maybe you're right, maybe he was part of this larger network to save Gotham and other, they kind of build up Gotham City as a character itself, right? There's the greatest city in the world. His moral fiber obviously had an impact on Bruce. Like that scene that you mentioned, Dean, where, he had the gun. He was going to shoot Joe Chill, who killed his parents and was finally going to be released because he was going to give evidence against, Falcone. But somebody from Falcone's team kills him. So Rachel sees the gun and slaps him across the face and then slaps him again. But then, the line, right?
Yeah.
Your father would be ashamed. That's what you see, the look in his eyes, like that hurt more than those two slaps, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what lingers with him. It's like, what would his father do? His father wouldn't kill. His father wouldn't do these terrible things. He wouldn't stoop to the level of the criminal. He wanted to save Gotham City. And that's the legacy that he wants to uphold and become. Even though he's wearing a mask now and scaring the living daylights out of these criminals, he wants to be something that's going to bring hope to this city. And I think, maybe Thomas Wayne and Alfred and Lucius, they were all in trying to do that. And then it got subverted again,
Yeah, I think it was the obsessive nature of Bruce Wayne also, though, because that sets him on this path to at first, all he did is he basically left Gotham without a word. He just no notice. But to go on this journey of self-discovery to understand the criminal mind or to understand what that's about. And they go into that a little bit where he's leading the criminal life and understanding the nature that sometimes people have to steal to live. And that it's not always for, some devious or some criminal act, but just a self-preservation act. Eventually gets thrown in prison, gets basically freed by Liam Neeson, who is Ducard / Ra's al Ghul. I'm not giving anything away because I blew it already in the beginning. Basically invites him to say, listen, if you're looking for something more, if you're looking for that justice and that balance, we have a place for you. So he makes the trek, gets there, basically joins what's called the League of Shadows, which is this underground, centuries old organization of, Bruce Wayne would call it vigilantes, but they call themselves, purveyors of justice, where when things get throughout history, when the balance of power needs to be reset, the League of Shadows would come into different cities throughout time. Constantinople, they mentioned, and some other ones.
Yeah.
Either, through chaos or destruction, reset these cities that had fallen so badly, so they can rise again. Their notion supposedly is the pursuit of pure justice, is to reset these cities when they become beyond saving. And that's when we find, when Bruce Wayne's training is done, is they want him to spearhead the charge to Gotham, to basically ransack it and bring it down so it can be rebuilt. And this is where the important scene happens, is when he's supposed to kill somebody. This is where, and you also get the origin of Batman's like no kill credo. Yeah. Also, because you never really see that. You only ever hear about that if you read the comics. He doesn't like to kill. He's got this thing, but
that's right.
It's kind of there. But in the film, they actually put it to film that, I'm not going to kill. We're supposed to kill this local guy. He killed someone else. Well, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. He should go on trial for justice. And that you see the origin of his no kill clause.
They put him to the
in
test.
Batman's contract.
That's right. He's like, talks about the corruption of the system. He's like, it's all corrupt. And then later you find out that the League of Shadows has been implanting all these kind of corrupt officials in every level of Gotham, and who knows how many other civilizations through history. So it's almost like, who do you trust? Bruce Wayne at the time, before he becomes Batman, he's kind of learning this moral code. He's kind of learning
Yeah.
what is right, what is wrong, and kind of almost goes with his gut. And in the later films, all those things that he's learned kind of get tested, right? Because
Yeah,
right.
the typical criminal behavior that he learns, he spent so much time trying to studying, doesn't apply to folks like the Joker or Bane, or then the Scarecrow, who's kind of lost his mind after that toxic inhalation that he had.
yeah,
So
and I think
really
it's
great
his
writing.
interactions with his interactions with the criminal elements make him understand that he's not the judge, jury, and executioner. That maybe someone stole because they were hungry, so they should be judged on that, right? And not just automatically like put to death. So I think that's where you get to see the moral code of Bruce Wayne, a la via Batman, start to take hold. And basically, he does not join the League of Shadows. There's a big fight. Ducard or Ra's al Ghul is presumed dead, although he saves him, but then he kind of Bruce Wayne kind of leaves him in a hut and returns to Gotham after 7 years of being gone. And now you kind of start to see the beginning of Batman is where he starts to put all these different things into play of leveraging Wayne Industries. He comes back and they had him pronounced dead. So there's some levity there too. It's not all dark and dour. They do have that nice touch with when you have Michael Caine, he just, you can see he's just having fun with the role as well. He's just eating it up.
It was a stroke of genius for him to be cast. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. You haven't given up on me, Alfred, have you? Never. You could see him just licking his chops, waiting to say, because he says it twice. Yeah. Never.
And that's the thing too. It's just, these types of actors, I mean, you just can't, they're just not to be ignored. They're just so prestigious, and it's such a pleasure to see them,
Yeah. When you got Liam Neeson kind of, up there also. It's just the stature of the people that they brought in to surround Christian Bale also to kind of send this movie off. They didn't really cut any corners. Let's put it that way. We didn't even get to Gary Oldman. I mean, it's just there's so much with this film.
These actors they could have played much bigger parts, but they're so tucked into their roles, and every role, even how large or small, they're perfect in the role. So you can't really,
and they're really well written.
Critical.
Yeah, so. And you know what? I'm gonna step up to the plate right now on this one, because she is much maligned, Katie Holmes. And I think over time, the more I watch Batman Begins and watch her performance, the more I appreciate it. Actually, the role was a little underwritten as far as their relationship between Bruce Wayne and Rachel. When I saw Maggie Gyllenhaal in the second one, actually, I didn't care for her as much. I ended up liking Katie Holmes a little bit more. A little more spunk. I think a little more fire. They didn't have a lot of quality scenes together, but I think she did the best with what she had. I think she kind of gets a lot of flack for it, but
I agree. I kind of wish they'd stuck with her. I would have liked to have seen what she had done with the later ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. We're in defense of Katie Holmes on this. So Bruce Wayne returns and has this idea that, kind of biting off the League of Shadows a little bit is, I need to protect Gotham. I can't do it as Bruce Wayne. I need to do it as something else, a symbol. And so we get those great scenes. And then he finally meets Morgan Freeman, who we really didn't even talk about too, right? Lucius Fox, another top tier actor, just in all these side roles. These are not gigantic roles that these people are in.
That's right.
And what I like about this film so much too is that Bruce Wayne can't do it alone. In the other films, in the previous grouping of films, he's kind of self-sufficient. The Batcave is there. He's got all the technology.
He's got the gadgets.
He's doing everything himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
In this one, he's relying on Lucius Fox because he's got some technology or gadgetry. They have to order the cowls and the masks from China or wherever they have to get them mass produced. So they do kind of acknowledge that it's not just one guy kind of doing this all his own. They have to create these dummy corporations so they can have these things made. And then he's trying to get the stuff from Lucius Fox, and he's a little suspicious too. So I like that there's a network of people that it's more. It actually grounds it a little bit more. Yeah, he's got unlimited funds. That doesn't mean he has unlimited knowledge. They're not
Yeah, he's not
They're
Tony
not portraying
Stark.
Bruce Wayne as a genius. Not
Right.
that he's stupid,
Right.
but he's now Tony Stark.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly. I like the fact that he doesn't know some of these characters either. This is where he meets Lucius Fox for the first time. So he's getting to meet these sort of his dad's peers, his his comrades as it were, and I think there's a little something there that he goes, I'm not an idiot, Mr. Wayne. I mean, I don't want to know what you're into, but it's just implied that, but you notice that they're kind of watching him do this, and they're not questioning it.
Yeah,
Lucius
just a little suspicious.
Fox isn't questioning it. Neither is Alfred. At this point, Alfred, it's like, you came back after all these years, and all of a sudden you're obsessed with, and he's not stopping him. He's not giving him the lectures yet. Exactly.
Maybe they're familiar with that kind of behavior from a Wayne. Not that Thomas Wayne was a superhero donning a cape and cowl, but he probably was doing things behind the scenes when he was building that, the train and doing all the things to help
that obsessive
Gotham, that
obsessive nature,
cutting the corners a little bit because it had to be done.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then of course there's one other character that remembers Thomas Wayne, and that's Mr. Earl, played by the great Rutger Hauer too. So again, when I saw Rutger Hauer, anytime we could see Rutger Hauer, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah,
like he was a surprise in Sin City. So I'm glad that he got like a second lease on his career, and he's just really great. Again, not too many scenes, but he's just oily, and you could just tell he's, we're taking the company public, Bruce. Can't stop the wheels, kind of like that type of thing.
Now,
and then there's that one great scene. He's like, "You look like your father," and they kind of slicked back like Christian Bale's hair, so he looks like Linus Roach, who was a great actor, by the way, too. He was on the tail end of Law and Order.
Yes.
So again, top to bottom, just pros in this movie. But Rutger Hauer was also a pleasure to see running the board, and then firing Lucius Fox. It was like, you didn't get the memo type thing.
So was he there? Was he placed there by the League of Shadows?
I don't think so. I think it was there. I think it's just, he's just
okay.
I think he's just been waiting to take over. I think he's been waiting to get sink his claws into Wayne Industries.
Mm. Yeah, because I'm just referring to that
one
part where he's
questioning about that
when he's asking Fox
when
about
they stole
I want
that
all
device,
the data on I want all the data on it, and by the way, you're out of here. So I kind of got suspicious of that. It's like, hey, this guy's probably
never thought. I just thought he was trying to cover up like what could have been a massive scandal that they lost. I don't think, I never got the impression he was smart enough or that they'd infiltrated Wayne Industries, though. I never got the impression that the League of Shadows infiltrated Wayne Industries to that extent. I just think it was like this thing went missing. Because he was like, when the guy told him, he goes, and it went missing. He's like, yeah, it went missing. It's like, oh crap. I think he was more in kind of like cover up mode, and anybody that would have any knowledge of it, he was cutting loose. So he would have like, plausible deniability, as it were. So he would not have to get in trouble over it. I think that's what it was. I think he was just an outside pawn of this whole scenario.
Well, I just love the fact that because something's so well written this way, and then of course you got Chris Nolan, that you are able to take away all these little theories, that you can come up with these little things that they don't explain it, they don't bother to go there, whatever. So you just come up with your own thing, and I like that. I like having a different opinion and a different take on certain things. So help serve the story in your own way, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Either way, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and while all this stuff is happening, so while Batman Bruce Wayne is becoming Batman, and there's all these other machinations of drugs coming in, and the local local mobster, there's also Dr. Jonathan Crane, who is also people are being caught and put into jail and through court, and Dr. Jonathan Crane is putting him into Arkham Asylum, and it turns out that, he, and they just kind of brilliant. I mean, Scarecrow doesn't make an appearance until late in the film. Also, it's just like Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
As Dr. Jonathan Crane, and he's kind of creepy and just kind of like weird, like kind of strange. And then we find out why he's so strange, and when he asks, Tom Wilkinson, Carmine Falcone, would you like to see my mask?
Yeah.
And then we see that, wow, there's, they kind of snuck that one in. It's kind of like, okay, it's just like run of the mill villains. There's a drug guy, a mobster, which is great too. I like that it's grounded. And then they kind of sneak Scarecrow in out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden he's just kind of like and then they kind of drop him. He's kind of low level. He's kind of working with the drug shipments that are coming in. That was a creepy scene when Batman gets dosed for the first time, when they're in that rainy, when he's kind of staking out that rainy apartment and the drugs are in there. Great scene there. And especially with Michael Caine after he rescues Batman and he's in the back seat. And you just see Michael Caine's face when he's driving, and he just has that look of despair because everything's been relatively successful up to this point, aside from bumps and bruises, which they see. But him getting dosed and saying, I've been poisoned and all that kind of stuff, and writhing and just in this like paranoid.
Now we're heading into like deeper territory here. This is something he probably didn't expect. It's a little bit of more things are becoming more surreal.
Yeah, outside the realm of normal gangsters.
Exactly. And you see the different tiers of, if you got Falcone, and then the next step is Scarecrow, who's a pawn to something even bigger. And the networking in this is fantastic. I love how
the whole movie he's trying to fight off his fears, right? The whole movie is like that, him trying to fight off his fears. And then when he becomes Batman, he finally is able to sit in the Batcave, and the bats are just flying around him. He's standing still and he's accepting it. And in that scene, his fears come back because of this chemical, right? It's all
that's right.
And he's doubting himself. It is a great scene. Cinematically, it's beautifully shot, and the character's great. Who knows if Joel Schumacher would have been able to do his third film, Batman Triumphant, or whatever he was going to call it. He was thinking of getting Howard Stern, right, to play the Scarecrow. Yeah, who knows how that would have been played out. This is so realistic and so perfect.
Nick, you bring up a great contrast I wanted to bring up since you brought up Schumacher is in this, which is the fight scenes. Okay, so if we look at one of the things that bothered me about Batman Forever, I liked that Val Kilmer was taking over. He was my favorite actor at the time, but the fight scenes were just so clunky. They were so choppy. And I think just because I don't think Joel Schumacher knew how to really kind of block action scenes like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas the fight scenes or the action scenes in Batman Begins are choppy and disorienting for a reason, because you're not supposed to be able to tell what's going on.
That's right.
On purpose. It's supposed to be like this image, like, because he has this ninja-based training that, at the scene at the docks when he's just like dispatching 10 guys, you really don't even see what he does. You don't even see you just see bodies moving and disorientation and chaos. Whereas in the Schumacher versions, it was that because they just didn't know how to really film the action scenes the right way. Whereas this was intent to disorient you, that you were one of the guys at the dock and you didn't know what was going on. Guys are getting swooped and picked up and it's just like spinning. And then all you see is Batman's feet as he like walks over the guys, and I think that's the difference, is understanding what you're trying to do with those action scenes as well. Because you would see in the following two films, the action scenes would kind of broaden a little bit, and you would get to see Batman fighting, like actually fighting up close and doing stuff. But it's a lot more kind of electric, where it's quick and you're not really sure and disorienting when you're trying to watch it.
I like that. I think Bale had a lot to do with that too. I think it was his input that Batman should be in the shadows, like sort of like stooping, and he goes, I think what did he say? He said, putting on the suit, you have to let the beast emerge while you're in the suit. So you're actually, he's, acting like a bat. He's like kind of hanging out and like, just
how could you not pose if you were in that costume?
Exactly.
Nick, how could you not pose if you were of course we would be posing.
And it's effective too. It looks great.
It totally is. But those bring the fear to the criminals, right?
And through being a symbol. So that's exactly that's exactly what happens. So what we end up getting is just a kind of a culmination of all these different stressors, I guess, in Batman and Bruce Wayne's journey come to a head, where he needs to confront his past, which is going to tie him to his future as well. And that they keep bringing up his parents, like when he's at the party and he's drunk and Ra's al Ghul shows up and Bruce Wayne throws everybody out, and they're like, in one of those guys like, this is not what your father would do. I mean, they just keep throwing that in his face, that the contrast. But now it's a choice. Now he has to be this way. He has to have this. And like Rachel Dawes said at the end, this is your mask. Bruce Wayne is your mask.
Exactly.
What the people see out on the streets is the real Bruce Wayne. And that was such a brilliant line. And it came at the end that this is now the Playboy persona going into the hotel and swimming in the pool and just being an asshole is really what he has to, like, that's what he's destined to have to do to protect the people that he loves and to also be able to have this other persona. And unfortunately he has to kind of crap over on his family's name, although to a lesser extent in the later films, he opened the orphanage and he did some of those other things.
Yeah. He'll be doing it behind the scenes.
Yeah. Being the Playboy is it's a mess.
Yeah, it is. So what happened? I mean, just to tie up the kind of plot, and then we can kind of geek out on our favorite scenes and that kind of stuff. Ra's al Ghul is not dead. He comes back to exact vengeance on Gotham to finish what was started. They've been, over this time, what the drugs were is this psychotropic kind of drug that they put in the water supply. They're going to fire off this weapon that's going to basically turn it into a vapor. Everyone's going to inhale it, and Gotham will tear itself apart. And once again, Batman can't do this alone. So now he partners with Jim Gordon. Right. And finally, like, Gary Oldman's another high caliber actor, did not have to do this film, kind of lurking the scenes as Jim Gordon, not in it a lot, but really the confidant of Batman, kind of understands. It's the only one that Batman trusts, the only cop that Batman trusts as well. Mm-hmm. He needs his help. He gives him the tumbler, which is the Batmobile. He's got to shoot out some columns to stop the train to divert it. And he has a final fight with Ra's al Ghul, Liam Neeson. His no-kill clause comes. Train is barreling towards Wayne Tower. I think Ra's al Ghul says, yeah, now you finally have learned or whatever. And Batman says, well, no, just because I'm not going to kill you doesn't mean I have to stop you. Doesn't mean I have to do anything also. So that's kind of weird. He kind of let him die. Did he kill him? You. Yeah, I don't have to save you. Well, that's kind of the same thing as killing someone, Nick. If you're drowning and I'm saying, listen, I don't have to save you. I'd still get blamed, I think.
And I think that's where, like in comics too, they it's a fine line. Once you set that kind of moral line, it becomes something that a good writer has to explore, and it is explored in the later movies because then you have the Joker, and in the comics, so many people how many people could Batman have saved if he had just killed the Joker, right? But yeah, so it's a fine line. It's like, well, I don't have to save you, but I don't have to kill you, but I don't have to save you. You're killing him, pretty much, right?
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, he ran over a cop car with the tumbler. I don't know how those guys lived. They were like underneath, like calling him on the CB. It's like, he was just rolling over people anyway. So I'm not sure. I think that no kill clause kind of comes and goes. I think it's convenient.
But Alfred does call him out on it. Yeah. So again, it's grounded.
He does, and I love the anger that Alfred had, because it's like,
yes,
and you see the development. You see him as a character learning this stuff, right? He's learning that he can't just go and he wants to save the city, but he's destroying it, trying to get to the Batcave with Rachel, and so he is learning, And when he falls down, and bruises himself, all this stuff. It's like he's learning all the stuff he has to do. He can't just snap his fingers and suddenly become a one-man army. It was okay beating these guys in prison,
and that's the running theme through the film is why do we fall? Is to learn how to pick ourselves back up. That theme gets revisited throughout, and that's the overarching thing is the fall of Bruce Wayne, right? When he was going to kill Joe Chill. He had to learn to pick himself back up and to look at justice in a different way. And then as Batman, he kind of fell. He wasn't always that successful, especially in the beginning with the stapler in the back of the head. And he like jumped off the roof and he hit like three fire escapes on the way down. He almost had like a sadistic smile on his face after that, though. When he recovered, when he got onto the fire escape, he almost looked like he was like, this is pretty wild. Like it was like a sadistic smile.
Well, I definitely think there's a rush, there's, he's, the fact that he's able to do these things, he has this equipment, he is playing a little bit too, and I think that rush is kind of getting to him. He'll say, "Oh, I was doing it to save Rachel." In this particular case, trying to get back to the Batcave, but yeah, I mean, how much millions of dollars of damage that you cause for guys in the cop cars? I mean, I didn't have time to obey the rules of the road, Alfred. And Alfred just wouldn't have it.
Yeah, so just drive across a roof instead.
You can't, But
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll just drive on the roof, and all the tiles are coming off the. I mean, the amount of destruction, and then the train scene at the end, the amount of destruction, because that train just derailed, fell into like the ground or whatever, and then the pillars went into the. That this was kind of, I think this is where David S. Goyer, the screenwriter, came in, because you would see this times 50 in Man of Steel, just what they call disaster porn. Just the amount of destruction that happened was over the top in Man of Steel. And I think this was kind of a little bit of a precursor of just this man, and they've kind of pulled away from it. A lot of the movies we don't need this over the top, because people just don't want to see that. But yeah, Batman had its fair share of Gotham really getting racked up.
Well, that was the one thing when I first saw the movie in the theater. That was probably the thing that was off-putting, because up to this point, the movie is so grounded in reality that that last act of the film, to me, yeah, it kind of felt like I'm watching just another comic book movie, because it was so. They finally went there where he's like hanging off the bottom of the train, and and the whole thing, so of course it had to be done, I suppose, to get the job done. But it's just, to me, it's, upon repeated viewings, you get used to it. But,
if there's a train derailing, I want to see Harrison Ford jumping out of it in his jail jumpsuit
without breaking any bones.
Wyatt Earp here is going to take it over.
But the destruction of Gotham is something that they just keep talking about. Like in the next, you wonder, Nolan just had that in his head, I think, because for all three of his films, the villain wanted to just bring anarchy and destruction to Gotham City and destroy it.
Yeah, so definitely a running theme.
I think you have to have that as a final act. But yeah, it is a little because he's trying to save the city, and yet to do so, you're creating more mayhem and destruction, and how much collateral damage was probably involved in that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good thing he's anonymous.
So
he basically he saves everything. In between, we missed a plot point where his Wayne Manor was burnt also, and he had foreshadowed that in an earlier scene with when he was younger with Alfred. He said, if I had my way, I'd pull this down brick for brick. It actually does get burnt down, but now he's looking at it from a different standpoint. Is I want to rebuild it. Before, he was angry. He didn't want the Wayne legacy hanging over him. Now what are we going to do? We're going to rebuild this thing as it was, because he understands the legacy and understands how important it is and what the ties to Gotham are. And he's like, we're going to build it exactly as it was. Make some improvements.
Alfred is like, some changes. So like you said, Alfred's got these ideas already. It's not just that he's just like obedient servant doing what his boss is telling him to do. I think you're right. He's had this background, this Secret Service, military kind of thing. And probably something that maybe Thomas Wayne has been thinking about too, of things to do. And so, he's totally, all those changes to Wayne Manor is not just Bruce Wayne that came up with those ideas. It's Alfred as well.
Yeah, improvements to the southeast corner. and the great thing about the second film is that the Wayne Manor still isn't built yet. So they're using like underneath, I think, Wayne Enterprises as like the Batcave. So I kind of like that Rome wasn't built in a day. Like all of a sudden in the next movie, it's built, it's back, it's brand new, it's
continuity
fresh.
Is there.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's still in the construction phase, and that gave them a different opportunity too to work with some things. So yeah, just a brilliant care and really being smart and learning, I think, the lessons of the previous Batman films, of learning about, I don't know if Spider-Man 3 had come out by this point. I should have checked that because that was another one that really jumped the shark. And you see, as these, X-Men did it with the third X-Men film, they got so corny that bringing Christopher Nolan in kind of, I think was a forerunner to like Jon Favreau and Iron Man and the care that they would take with the franchises as well. And even though the MCU is much more obviously comic booky, I think it has its roots and grounded in this Batman trilogy.
No, you're right. I mean, you mentioned it before, the X-Men kind of was a factor, but I think this one is really inspired. And Jon Favreau is a great director too. I would love to see him kind of take any of these geeky characters and see what he can do with it. He did such a great job with Iron Man. And definitely has a lot of influence from Batman Begins and the Batman trilogy.
Yeah, a lot of filmmakers cite Batman Begins as an inspiration for filmmaking. I mean, it was just a lot there. Just the golden tone of the film too. And sometimes it's almost close to sepia because the golds and the browns are so deep in Gotham. And I think that I'm not even sure what it means. Does it mean that it's the Golden City? I don't know what it means, but the warm tones also that they had used and the filmmaker's touch that Tim Burton doesn't have. Tim Burton again has the style. Christopher Nolan had these beautiful wide shots of the city and some sweeping action scenes, especially when he was training with Ducard and that whole scene on the ice, widening out when you need to and getting in and claustrophobic and chaotic when you need to as well. Not just kind of shooting everything the same way, but having that intent for what each scene is going to portray. Even action scenes, they don't have to be the same, and they weren't. They all had a different feeling for what they were trying to convey. So
it was all the emphasis was always about building character, though.
Yeah,
character over everything else. Even as epic as the movie looked, these on location shoots and that kind of thing, but it was always about the character. And then, of course, that's the thing about Marvel too. That carried over from these. That's the major influence, I think, is because they care about their characters.
Yeah, and then you don't have
anything else.
Yeah, and then with the next films, you can kind of move on from it. With the original Batman, the Burton ones, like. In the third one with Val Kilmer, they kind of revisited. He was having visions, the bat, the parents, they kind of had to call back to that. With this, they spent the first hour just kind of building, setting the scene, because a lot of people had never gotten the whole experience of what the origin story was, and they were able to backfill it with Thomas Wayne being a doctor and he's caring and comes down the well and helps him up. I mean, you get a little feeling for his home life, how he was kind of a happy kid before this happened.
And this is all about overcoming fear. Fear is the main theme of this one. I think chaos is the main theme of Dark Knight. And I don't really know what the third, I think it's pain,
redemption,
pain or anarchy.
Redemption. The Dark Knight rises. He rises like the sun.
But there's like these one
he rises like a nuclear explosion at the end.
It's really, I usually don't like when they kind of revisit, especially a character like Batman, who's been around so long. Everybody knows how he became Batman. So sometimes I'm like, why do we need to have another origin story? Just jump right into the action like a James Bond film, right? Mm-hmm. But this worked because it's setting up all those things about fear and everything, all the scenes with Alfred and Jim Gordon. It's building up. And so that's what great character scenes are all about, without slowing down the pace of the movie either. It's just like, you really feel what Alfred is contributing, and you really feel what that bond is between Jim Gordon and Batman. It's going to get tested in the later films. You need that. So in this case, I think the origin story really worked.
That's the thing. In this film, in Batman, all you ever hear about Batman is the parents were killed, and he became a vigilante. Great. Batman Begins really gives you the motivation, though, and it gives you the actions that he took that would also lead him to figure out that maybe he needs to look at a different way of handling this too, right? Because he was going to be a vigilante, and Batman isn't just a vigilante, but that's when you narrow down the origin story. Nick, you're right. It's like, okay, it's been done before. How many times do we have to see a spider, bite Peter Parker? We kind of know it, unless you're going to bring something else to it to fill it in, which they did in this case. They backfilled the first hour of just that whole story and his journey. It wasn't just kind of, he's brooding, his parents get killed, he broods some more, then he becomes Batman. There's a journey that he goes on of self-discovery, and then comes back and says, I want to do something about it. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
This could be the best origin story, I think. What do you think? What do you guys think? I mean, could it, out of all the, Spider-Man, I think it's the most like you say, Dean, it's like they took their time to really explain everything. Spider-Man, they kind of jump into it, montages, things like, everything's fast paced, but here it's like they really take the time to really develop it.
Believe it or not, I think Man of Steel actually kind of came close, because they did try and kind of slow it down a little bit and look at the struggles from his, as this kid who has these powers, doesn't know what to do with them, and how does he fit in, and Kevin Costner, not to this extent, but I think they tried to kind of have that same feeling as well of, what, understand the motivation, how he doesn't feel like he's part of Earth, but he is, but then after, the rest of the movie just really kind of got a little crazy.
I don't know. I thought Donner did such a good job with his movie, with the origin. I have issues with Man of Steel and why they needed to go in some of the directions that they did. I loved a lot of things about it. I wrote a whole blog post about it, but it's I don't think it needed to be done because Donner had already done that, I thought, and done it well. So, like you say, if you're not going to contribute anything new, why go there? Whereas in this case, with Batman Begins, I thought it brought so much that hadn't been there before, and I thought it was really well done.
All right, let's talk a little bit about. We'll go once around since there's three of us. Favorite scene in the film, Eric? Why don't you start us off?
Probably my favorite scene is when he comes back, and the scenes where he's gearing up and he's in the cave when he goes splunking and when the bats come, and I think that's probably, and every scene with Alfred, every scene his interactions with Alfred, those are my favorite scenes in the film. I don't really have one specific, but every time Alfred, like I said, calls him out on stuff, and when he's going off the rails a little bit, Alfred's always there to pick him back up, and I just love that chemistry there. So that those are my favorite moments.
Never
film. Yeah.
Never. Nick, you have a favorite or a couple of favorites?
I mentioned it earlier. I think it was the slap across the face, and your father would be ashamed of you. And then he goes to, he goes in to see Carmine Falcone, and he starts laying into him and saying, who are you? What do you? The whole worldview thing, and he pulls out the gun on him. It's like, I could kill you right now. Nobody here would say anything. And then he says that line to him about Joe Chill said to him when they were in prison, right? He said, your dad begged for mercy. And we all know that's not true, because he was there and saw his dad die. And the line, what did his dad say? He said, don't be afraid. His last dying words, don't be afraid, right? So and then he walks out, takes off his coat, throws his money in the fire, and that's when he goes off and says, I got to do something. I'm trained to become something different. And that's just a great scene right there. That character-wise, and it's also great cinema, right? It's all the gangster tropes and all these kind of things, but it's a great scene, and
and Falcone literally lays it out for me. He says, you'd have to go 1,000 miles. You're the Prince of Gotham. You'd have to go 1,000 miles for somebody not to know you. That literally laid the groundwork for him to walk outside. And the great actor Roddy Sherbeggia, who's a great actor, who's the bum. Yep. I mean, he's an actor in his own right who's done a lot of major films. That's so they're, again, top to bottom, back to front, they're stacking this, and he's literally got like 2 lines, but gives him the coat, gives him his money, throws the wallet into the fire, and disappears. Yep. Disappears into the night. My favorite sequences, just because it's so creepy, was after when in the Narrows when they activate the weapon. And all the water gets in, made into an aerosol, and everybody, and Batman is like flying over. Yeah. And the people are like freaking out because the eyes are all like flame, and he's got like horns. So, I mean, it would be scary enough just seeing a guy like that. But then when these people are dosed with like the psychotropic thing, and they're looking up and they're seeing him like flying over like devil, like with the flame eyes, and everybody's kind of tripping out. And when Mark Boone Jr. Flash, when he gets dosed and the kids are walking down, and you see that they're kids, but then you see from his point of view that they look like zombie-ish, and he's about to blow them away. Yep. Just really really creepy and well done. Just to kind of get that you really get to see what the effects are of it, because when you saw it in the beginning with Ra's al Ghul, it was more trippy. It was kind of like camera-y. And then you really didn't get to see the effects of it too much when Tom Wilkinson got dosed. You just saw he was crazy afterwards. You got a little bit of it when Scarecrow got dosed himself, of how Batman had all the stuff coming out of his mouth.
I love that. I wish he could be like that all the time.
I don't know.
That was cool.
No, I was like, that's let's get him back to regular. But that whole scene, in the Narrows, just because it was so much kind of elements of danger, and then Batman gets overwhelmed by all those people as well, and he grabs for the grappling gun on the ground and shoots himself up. So yeah, look at that. We've all got three different 3 different positions on it,
Great
which is
scene.
pretty awesome. So it's a drama. I mean, it's less of a superhero film and more of a dramatic film. Again, especially for the first hour, is just kind of setting up this whole universe, and it is more of a serious take on the superhero film.
It does teach you some things too. They carefully, Nolan said he made this film. Yes, it's darker, but he didn't go too far. It wasn't bloody. It wasn't that violent in that sense where a 12-year-old boy would want to see this film. He goes, I would have wanted to see this when I was 12. For me, I as much as I like the Tim Burton, this is the Batman movie I always wanted to see, because I always felt it should be more realistic and more darker and, a different take. Because he's just a regular guy. He doesn't have any superpowers. And like we say, I'm glad that he's not like Tony Stark, that he doesn't have the heads, the intelligence to make these things. He's got to get them from somewhere, some kind of resources or whatever. But the only thing that I will say that I wish they could have played up on a little bit more was the detective angle of it, because he is a great detective. That in the comics and, all the iterations, he does do a lot of that great detective work. So he's like the world's greatest detective. That's his superpower, I think, more than anything else. So, and I wish they could have played up on that a little bit more, but
he's too busy buying a hotel and swimming.
I think this is the definitive Batman movie for me, because I just like the look of it. It's dark. Yeah, Dean. I got it. I
think when people think of
5
the trilogy,
seconds late, but I got it.
they downplay this one a little bit.
Yeah, it's very easy for Heath Ledger and everything that he did to really overshadow that. That's become the iconic film in the series. It's the one that people probably will watch without having to watch. I mean, you really don't have to watch this film to watch that one.
Right.
And it really did overshadow everything, and probably justifiably so. Even if Heath Ledger didn't pass away, it was just on a different level. So that's going to do it, right? I think we've covered all the bases, and we're in the process of rebuilding Wayne Manor ourselves, brick by brick. So we have to get moving on that, because Nick is on shovel duty. I'm going to be laying the bricks, and Eric's going to be installing the windows. So that's how it's the only way it can get done. So we appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in again. Nick Leshi, thank you. I want everybody check out his pop culture blog, City of Kick. We're going to put a link in our show notes, and that's at 3324.buzzsprout.com. He's also soon to be seen in the YouTube web series Multiverse Corporation, right?
That's right. Keep your eyes tuned. I'll probably plug it in my blog as well. A lot of great content. This whole pandemic made us realize all the things we could do when, being more creative. Low budget, just like, Christopher Nolan. You don't have to have CGI effects and everything to make something entertaining. So let's see how that turns out.
And Nick is a very, very prolific writer and very entertaining. So by all means, please, again, I will throw the link into the show notes for City of Kick, pop culture blog. Nick Leshi, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We appreciate it. It's been great to catch up with you this way, and great to see you via video too. For the ones that watch our video on YouTube, we post these.
Great to meet you, Nick. I heard a lot about you.
Had a great time.
So yeah. Yep.
Awesome. So we're going to thank you for Eric and for Nick. This has been Dean. Thanks for tuning in. And we're going to ask you to please be kind and rewind.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.